Odin's Plan, Chapter 1. A vision is born in Asgard's glittering halls, where gold and starlight intertwined along the walls. Odin sat upon his high throne, Hlidskjalf. His single eye, which had witnessed worlds being born and falling, gazed out over the 9 realms. But today, his gaze was not fixed on the forests of Midgard or the icy expanses of Jotunheim. No, his thoughts were focused on a place beyond the Nordic realms, Olympus, the home of the gods in another world, where Zeus and his pantheon ruled with lightning and grapevines. Odin had a plan, a vision so bold that even he, the All-Father, felt a shiver of anticipation. He had heard tales of Olympus' splendor, of their feasts that echoed through time and space, where nectar flowed like rivers and gods danced beneath the stars. But Odin was not one to be satisfied with rumors. He wanted to surpass them. He wanted to hold a feast so magnificent that the gods of Olympus would come to Asgard, bow their heads in reverence, and acknowledge that the gods of the north were their equals, no, their superiors. But for this to succeed, there were 2 obstacles, 2 wild forces that could wreck his plans like a storm smashing a ship: Loki and Thor. Odin leaned forward, his ravens Huginn and Muninn croaking softly from his shoulders. He stroked his beard and murmured to himself, "Loki, the cunning one, whose tongue is sharper than any sword, and Thor, my son, whose hammer is as unpredictable as his temper. If they are present, the feast will end in chaos." He recalled Loki's past mischief, like when he cut Sif's golden hair or tricked Idun into handing over her apples. And Thor. His solution to everything was to swing Mjolnir and smash whatever stood in his way. No, they could not be here. Odin rose from his throne, his cloak of starlight sweeping the floor. He walked toward Valhalla's gates, where the souls of warriors feasted for eternity. But today, his mind was not with the Einherjar. He called for Frigg, his queen, whose wisdom often surpassed his own. When she arrived, her eyes glimmering with insight, he told her of his plan. "Frigg, my beloved," he said, "I will hold a feast that will make the gods of Olympus pale with envy, but Loki and Thor, they must be kept away. Their presence would turn my vision into a disaster." Frigg smiled faintly, her hands clasped before her. "Odin, you have watched the world tree grow and worlds fall. You have hung in Yggdrasil's branches to gain knowledge. Can you not handle 2 of your own?" Her tone was teasing, but her eyes were serious. Odin grunted. "Loki is a serpent and Thor is a thunderstorm. Together they are a plague. But I have a plan." He lowered his voice, as if fearing Loki might already be lurking nearby. "I will send Loki to the other side of the galaxy, to a place so remote that not even his cunning can return him in time. And Thor he will follow, if I know my son well enough." Frigg raised an eyebrow. "And how will you convince Loki to leave? He is not one to obey orders, not even yours." Odin smiled, a smile carrying both wisdom and cunning. "I will give him a challenge he cannot resist. Loki loves to prove his superiority. I will speak of a treasure, a secret hidden at the edge of the galaxy, something only he, the slyest of all, can find." Frigg nodded, though her gaze remained skeptical. "And Thor, he does not obey you without protest." "Thor," said Odin, "is simple. He will follow Loki out of pure envy. If Loki receives a quest, Thor will insist on coming along, if only to prove he is stronger. It is his nature." The plan was simple yet brilliant. Odin would send Loki on an impossible quest, and Thor would follow, driven by his pride. With them gone, Odin could prepare his feast without risk of chaos. He called for Loki, who soon appeared, sneaking in like a fox, his green eyes glittering with curiosity. "All-Father," said Loki with a mischievous bow, "what do you have for me today? A new world to deceive, a giant to confuse." Odin rose to his full height, his voice filled with authority. "Loki, I have heard of a treasure at the galaxy's outer edge, in a world beyond the stars we know. It is called the Heart of the Star, a power so mighty that it can reshape worlds. Only the most cunning can find it. Are you worthy?" Loki's eyes narrowed, but his grin grew. "You're trying to get rid of me, Odin, but I like a challenge. Tell me more of this Heart of the Star." Odin wove a story of a glowing crystal, hidden in a labyrinth of black holes and nebulas, guarded by creatures older than the gods themselves. He spoke with such conviction that even Loki, who could smell a lie from miles away, began to believe the tale. "It is a quest for me," Loki finally said. "I will set off at once." But before Loki could slip away, a thundering voice echoed through Valhalla. "What is this talk of treasures?" Thor stormed in, his red beard wild and Mjolnir dangling at his belt. "Loki, do you think you can undertake such a quest alone? I, Thor, god of thunder, shall accompany you to ensure you do not disgrace yourself." Odin concealed his smile. Everything was going according to plan. "Very well, Thor," he said. "Follow Loki, but ensure you do not fail. Asgard's honor rests on you." Loki cast an annoyed glance at Thor but said nothing. Thor, on the other hand, laughed heartily and struck Loki on the back so hard the smaller god stumbled. "We shall find this treasure, and I will crush everything in our path." As Loki and Thor prepared to travel through the worlds, Odin began planning his feast. He called upon Freyja and Freyja, Balder and Bragi, and even Heimdall, whose eyes could see all. "We shall create a feast no god has ever witnessed," he said. "We shall invite the gods of Olympus, Zeus, Hera, Athene, all of them. They will see Asgard's splendor and remember us forever." The work began. Valhalla's halls would be adorned with lights from the northern aurora. The tables would groan under food that even the gods would envy, and the music would be so enchanting that even the giants of Jotunheim would secretly listen. Yet in Odin's heart, a gnawing worry remained. Loki and Thor were gone, but for how long? Loki was cunning and Thor was stubborn. If they returned too soon, all could be lost. As Odin oversaw the preparations, he cast one last glance at the stars. Somewhere out there, Loki and Thor journeyed toward the edge of the galaxy, unaware that they were pieces in the All-Father's grand game. Odin turned and returned to Valhalla, his mind filled with plans and his heart with hope. The feast would be legendary if only his plan held. Odin's Plan, Chapter 2. Journey to the edge of the galaxy beyond the branches of Yggdrasil, where the worlds gave way to an endless sea of stars. Loki and Thor traveled through the cosmos. Loki had transformed into a streamlined falcon, his wings glimmering with stardust, while Thor thundered along in his chariot, pulled by the goats Tangjosta and Tangrisnir. The sky around them was a tangle of nebulas and black holes, and the air, if one could call it air, vibrated with an ancient energy that even Loki, the eternal trickster, felt a certain respect for. "Why did you come along, Thor?" muttered Loki, his falcon eyes narrowing as he glanced at the god of thunder. "This is my mission. The heart of the star is mine to find. You'll only ruin everything with your hammer." Thor laughed, a sound that echoed like thunder through the void. "Loki, you cunning serpent, do you think I trust you? You'd probably take the treasure and use it to trick all of Asgard. No, I am here to make sure you do nothing foolish, and to smash anything that stands in our way." He patted Mjolnir, safely hanging from his belt, and his eyes glittered with a warrior's excitement. Loki snorted but said nothing. Deep down, he was irritated. Odin's mission had sounded like the perfect chance to shine, to show that he was the slyest of all gods. But with Thor at his side, the risk of chaos, lightning and shattered planets was high. Still, he could not help feeling a certain thrill. The edge of the galaxy was a place few gods, if any, had visited. If the heart of the star truly existed, it would be a feat worthy of his name. They traveled through a nebula where stars were born in explosions of light and heat. Loki, always seeking an advantage, began plotting how to get rid of Thor. Perhaps he could trick the thunder god into chasing an illusion, or lead him straight into a black hole. But Thor was no fool, despite his fiery temper, and Loki knew he had to be cautious. One misstep, and Mjolnir could end up on his own head. Meanwhile, in Asgard, preparations for Odin's feast were in full swing. Valhalla's halls, already magnificent, were transformed into something even more grand. Freyja had summoned her cats, who pulled a chariot filled with golden fabrics from Vanaheim, now woven into drapes that captured the light of the northern lights. Freyja, with his sun god charm, oversaw the creation of tables so long they stretched from one end of Valhalla to the other, each groaning with dishes that smelled of honey, roasted boar, and fruits from worlds beyond Midgard. Odin himself moved from hall to hall, his ravens fluttering beside him. He inspected every detail with his single eye, his voice both gentle and commanding as he gave orders. Heimdall, he said to the guardian of the Bifrost, when the gods of Olympus arrive, make sure the rainbow bridge shines brighter than ever. They shall not doubt Asgard's power. Heimdall nodded, his golden eyes gleaming. They shall see Bifrost's glory, All-Father, but what if Loki and Thor return too soon? Odin frowned. They will not return in time. I have ensured their mission is sufficiently distracting. Yet, despite his confidence, a small worry gnawed at his chest. Loki was unpredictable, and Thor was stubborn. If anything went wrong, his entire plan could collapse. At the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor had reached a place where the stars grew sparse and the darkness thickened. Before them rose an enormous structure, a labyrinth of black crystals floating in the void. It was as if someone had carved a city from the night itself, its surfaces reflecting light in ways that made it difficult to tell where it began and ended. This must be the place, said Loki, shifting from his falcon form back into his usual shape. He now stood atop one of the crystals, his green cloak fluttering in an invisible wind. The heart of the star lies somewhere here. But I warn you, Thor, tread carefully. This is no place for your hammer, Thor grunted. I move as I wish, Loki. If anything stands in our way, I smash it. He leaped from the chariot, and the ground beneath him vibrated as his heavy boots struck the crystal. Loki rolled his eyes, but began leading the way into the labyrinth. The walls were covered in ancient runes, not unlike those in Asgard, but with a foreign aura that made even Loki shiver. He could sense a presence, something older and mightier than any giant or god he had encountered. Stay close, he said, for once without his usual sarcasm. This is no ordinary place. Thor, who never heeded warnings, marched forward with Mjolnir in hand. If there is anything here, it will regret crossing my path, he shouted, his voice echoing through the labyrinth, causing the crystals to sing a low, threatening tone. Back in Asgard, Odin had begun sending invitations to the gods of Olympus. He chose to use his ravens, Huginn and Muninn, as messengers, since their wings could cross worlds faster than any other. Each invitation was written on parchment of starlight, with runes that glowed and told of a feast surpassing anything Olympus had ever witnessed. Odin had carefully chosen his words, a blend of respect and confidence, to entice Zeus and his pantheon without appearing subservient. As Huginn and Muninn flew toward Olympus, Odin called upon Bragi, the god of poetry, to compose a song for the feast. Bragi, he said, your voice shall move the gods to tears of joy and envy. Write a song of Asgard's greatness, of Yggdrasil's roots, and of our power over the 9 worlds. Bragi bowed, his fingers already playing with words in his mind. It shall be a song that echoes through eternity, All-Father, he promised. As preparations continued, rumors began to spread through the other worlds. In Jotunheim, where the giants dwelled, whispers circulated about Odin's plans. He thinks he can outshine Olympus, snorted a giant named Thrym, his voice like an avalanche. We should disrupt his feast, show him Asgard is not invincible. Other giants were more cautious. Odin is cunning, said an elder giant, his eyes like icy lakes, and if he impresses the gods of Olympus, what becomes of us? Perhaps it is best to stay out of his way. In Midgard, where humans lived their brief lives, rumors also began to spread. Priests and Völvers spoke of a feast in the gods' realm, an event so grand that even the stars would pale. And beneath the sea, where Jörmungandr coiled, the serpent stirred uneasily. It could sense Odin's plans, its ancient mind filled with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Back in the labyrinth at the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor faced a new challenge. Before them rose a figure of crystal and light, a guardian carved from the stars themselves. Its voice was like a chorus of 1,000 worlds. You who seek the heart of the star, it said, must prove your worth. Only one of you may proceed. Loki shot a quick glance at Thor. This was his chance. If he could outwit the guardian and leave Thor behind, the treasure would be his alone. But before he could speak, Thor raised Mjolnir and shouted, I am Thor, god of thunder. I need prove nothing. I will crush you and claim the treasure. The guardian did not move, but the labyrinth began to shake. Loki swore quietly to himself. This was exactly what he had feared. Thor would ruin everything, and they might never find the heart of the star. But in the chaos, Loki also saw an opportunity. If he could turn Thor's strength to his advantage, perhaps he could outsmart both the Guardian and the god of thunder. As the labyrinth began collapsing around them, Loki started to forge a new plan. And in Asgard, Odin's preparations continued, unaware that his cunning scheme had already set in motion events that could change the worlds forever. Odin's Plan, Chapter 3. The Guardian's trial in the Black Crystal Labyrinth at the edge of the galaxy. Loki and Thor faced the shimmering Guardian, a figure of starlight and primal power blocking their path. The labyrinth's walls vibrated with its presence, and the runes etched into the crystals glowed with a furious pulse. The Guardian's words still echoed through the air. "Only one of you may proceed." Loki, already plotting, cast a quick glance at Thor, whose hand gripped Mjolnir so tightly that his knuckles whitened. "You heard the Guardian, Thor," said Loki, his voice smooth as honey but sharp as a knife. "Only one of us. This is my trial. Go back to your chariot and let me handle this." Thor snorted, his red beard trembling with anger. "Do you think I'll leave the treasure to you, Loki? You'd sell all of Asgard for a glittering stone. No, I will smash this thing and take the heart of the star myself." He raised Mjolnir, and lightning began to rumble in the void around them, even though no sky existed to bear it. Loki rolled his eyes, but realized he could not stop Thor from acting. Instead, he turned to the Guardian, his mind spinning with schemes. "O great Guardian," he said with a theatrical bow, "you say only one may proceed. But what is the trial? Is it strength, as my burly friend here believes, or is it something more refined?" His green eyes glittered with anticipation. The Guardian pulsed, and its voice filled the labyrinth like a chorus of 1,000 worlds. "He who seeks the heart of the star must prove mind, soul, and will. Strength alone is not enough. Cunning alone is not enough. You shall face 3 trials, and only one may continue after the last." Thor grunted. 3 trials. "I smashed them all," but Loki sensed opportunity. 3 trials meant 3 chances to outwit both Thor and the Guardian. He nodded toward the Guardian. "Then let us begin." The Guardian raised a hand, and the labyrinth shifted. Crystals around them moved like living beings, and a portal opened before them, glowing with blue light. "The first trial is the path of truth," said the Guardian. "Step through and confront what lies beyond." Loki and Thor entered the portal, and the world around them transformed. They now stood on a vast plain beneath a sky burning with 1,000 colors. Before them lay a narrow, sparkling bridge stretching across an abyss where stars fell like rain. On the far side, they could see a faint glow, perhaps the heart of the star itself. "This looks easy," said Thor, marching toward the bridge, but Loki grabbed his arm. "Wait, you thunderbrain," he hissed. The Guardian said, "Path of truth. Do you think a bridge over an abyss is just a walk? There's a trap here, and I won't let you destroy everything before we've even begun." Thor yanked free. "Trap or not, I cross. Stay behind me if you're afraid, Loki." He stepped onto the bridge, and in the same instant, it began to vibrate. A voice, not the Guardian's but something deeper, spoke from the abyss. "Name your greatest fear, God of Thunder," the voice said. "Speak truth, or the bridge will collapse." Thor halted, his face hard. "I am Thor, son of Odin, I fear nothing." But the bridge shook violently, and crystals beneath his feet cracked. Loki laughed, but his laughter died quickly when he realized he too was standing on the bridge. "You must speak truth, Thor," said Loki, "or we both fall." Thor turned, his eyes flashing. "Truth. My greatest fear is failing Asgard, not being strong enough when the worlds need me." His voice was low, and for the first time, he seemed not the confident god of thunder, but a man bearing the weight of the world. The bridge ceased shaking, and the voice spoke again. "Truth accepted, proceed." Thor stepped forward, and the bridge held. Loki followed, but as he placed his foot on the bridge, the voice spoke again. "Name your greatest fear, cunning one." Loki froze. His mind raced, seeking a way to wriggle out. He could lie, but the bridge would collapse. He could refuse, but then he would forfeit his chance at the treasure. At last, with a bitter smile, he spoke. "My greatest fear is powerlessness, to be trapped without the means to shape my own path." The bridge held, and the voice said, "Truth accepted. Proceed." They crossed the bridge and reached the far side, where a new portal awaited. But Loki could not shake the feeling that he had revealed too much. Thor cast a curious glance at him, but said nothing. For the first time, it seemed as if they were on the same side, at least for the moment. Back in Asgard, preparations for Odin's feast continued with a frenzy that made Valhalla's walls sing. Freyja had now adorned the ceilings with crystals from Alfheim, reflecting the northern lights in every color of the rainbow. Freyr had summoned his attendants from Vanaheim, who carried trays of fruits glowing like tiny suns and wines that tasted of stardust. Balder, the radiant god, walked around blessing every corner of the hall, filling the air with warmth and joy. Odin himself oversaw the construction of a throne for Zeus, a gesture of respect, but also a subtle reminder of Asgard's power. The throne was crafted from ash of Yggdrasil itself, carved with runes recounting the history of the north. Zeus shall sit here, Odin told Frigg, but he will know he is a guest in my realm. Frigg smiled. You play a dangerous game, my husband. The gods of Olympus are proud, and Zeus is not one who bends easily. He need not bend, replied Odin. He need only see our greatness and remember it. As Asgard transformed, rumors spread even further. In Jotunheim, the giants began to gather, their conversations filled with worry. If Odin wins Olympus' favor, said a giant named Skrymir, what then becomes of our place? He could turn their power against us. We should strike now, suggested Thrym, his voice thundering, before the feast begins. We can show Odin he is not invincible. But the elder giant, whose eyes were like ice, raised a hand. Wait, if Odin fails, the gods of Olympus will laugh at him, and if he succeeds, perhaps it is best we keep our distance. His cunning is deadlier than his spear. Beneath the sea, Jörmungandr stirred uneasily, its vast body sending waves rising along Midgard's coasts. It could sense Odin's plans, and its ancient mind filled with a strange fear. What was the Allfather plotting, and why did it feel as if the worlds themselves were shifting? Back in the labyrinth, Loki and Thor stepped through the second portal and found themselves in a hall of flowing light. Before them stood a pedestal, upon which rested a glowing crystal, but it was not the heart of the star. It was an illusion, a trial. The Guardian's voice echoed once more, the second trial is the path of sacrifice. What are you willing to give up to reach your goal? Thor frowned. I give up nothing, he said. I take what I want. But Loki, always thinking a step ahead, realized this was a trap. The path of sacrifice required something real, something meaningful. He looked at Thor and then at the crystal. If he could get Thor to sacrifice something great, perhaps he could claim the treasure for himself. But what could he sacrifice without losing too much? I sacrifice my pride, Loki said at last, his voice low. I admit I cannot always win alone. The words tasted bitter, but he felt they were true enough to satisfy the trial. The Guardian nodded, and the crystal on the pedestal dimmed. A new portal opened. Thor stared at Loki, surprised by his words, but said nothing. Instead, he approached the pedestal and spoke. I sacrifice my right always to go first. If the treasure is worthy, Loki may take it this time. Loki blinked, shocked. Had Thor really said that? But before he could respond, the portal fully opened, and they stepped into the third trial, unaware of what awaited them. In Asgard, the first signs of the arrival of the gods of Olympus began to appear. Bifrost shone brighter than ever, and Heimdall stood ready to welcome them. Odin stood in Valhalla, his heart pounding with anticipation. The feast was near, and his plans were in motion. But at the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor approached their goal, and perhaps their own chaos. Odin's Plan, Chapter 4. The final trial in the Black Crystal Labyrinth at the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor stepped through the third portal, and the world around them transformed once again. They now stood in a vast hall, its walls seeming to be made of flowing starlight, pulsing in rhythm with an invisible beat. At the center of the hall floated a glowing crystal, larger and more radiant than anything they had seen before. It was the heart of the star, or at least it appeared to be. But Loki, whose instincts were as sharp as his tongue, sensed something was wrong. This was too easy. The Guardian's voice echoed through the hall, deep and threatening. The third trial is the path of will, said the Guardian. its form materializing as a shifting shadow of light and darkness. The heart of the star is yours to take, but only one may hold it. Choose now and choose wisely, for your choice will bind you to its power and its burden. Thor, always quick to act, stepped toward the crystal, his hand already reaching for it. I am Thor, god of thunder. This treasure is mine, he shouted, and Mjolnir glowed in his hand as if sensing his resolve. But Loki grabbed his arm, narrowing his eyes. Wait, you thick-headed oaf, he hissed. Do you think the Guardian will just let you take it? This is a trial, not a gift. If you take the crystal without thinking, we could both be lost. Thor wrenched free, but hesitated, his gaze flickering between Loki and the crystal. What do you mean? It's right there in front of us. Should we just stand here and talk while the treasure waits? Loki sighed, his mind spinning with possibilities. The Guardian's words, your choice will bind you to its power and its burden, echoed in his head. He had seen enough traps in his life to know this was one, but what was the burden, and how could he turn it to his advantage? He cast a glance at Thor, ready to leap at the crystal like a hungry wolf. Perhaps, Loki thought, he could let Thor take the risk and then steal the treasure when the Guardian revealed the trap. You're right, Thor, Loki said, his voice suddenly silky. Take the crystal. You are the strongest among us. If anyone can bear its burden, it is you. Thor gave Loki a suspicious look, but his pride took over. Of course it is me, he said, and stepped forward. He reached out and grasped the heart of the star. At that moment, the hall exploded with light, and a wave of energy threw both Thor and Loki to the ground. The Guardian's voice thundered. You have chosen, God of Thunder, but the path of will requires more than strength. The crystal now binds you to the edge of the galaxy. Should you leave this place, its power will consume you. Thor rose, his face red with anger. What trickery is this? I am Thor, no force can bind me. He raised Mjolnir, ready to crush the Guardian, but Loki grabbed him again. Stop, Thor, shouted Loki. You heard what it said. If you take the crystal and leave, you will die. Let me take it instead. I can handle its power. Thor turned to Loki, his eyes flashing. Do you think I trust you? You would use the treasure to deceive all of Asgard. But there was a new note in his voice, uncertainty. For the first time, he seemed to hesitate before his own strength. Loki saw his chance. Then here's what we do, he said. We leave the crystal here. We have passed the trials, but we do not need to take the treasure. Perhaps the Guardian itself is the real treasure, the knowledge we have gained. Thor blinked, confused. Leave it, after all this? But before he could protest, the Guardian nodded, and the hall began to shift again. The crystal vanished, and a new portal opened. The Guardian's voice spoke one last time. You have shown will. Return to your worlds, but know that the heart of the star will always call. Loki and Thor stepped through the portal, and as they did, Loki realized he had won, not the treasure, but something more valuable. He had kept Thor in check and survived the trials. Yet in his mind, a new plan began to form. If he could convince Thor that they had failed, perhaps he could return alone later and claim the crystal. For now, it was time to return to Asgard, if they could find the way. In Asgard, preparations for Odin's feast had reached their peak. Valhalla's halls were now a vision of splendor, with walls draped in the light of the northern lights, tables laden with dishes that smelled of the gods' own nectar, and music from Bragi's lyre filling the air with an enchanting melody. Odin walked among his gods, his single eye gleaming with satisfaction. Everything was perfect, or as close to perfection as Asgard could get. Huginn and Muninn had returned from Olympus, their cawing voices carrying news that Zeus and his pantheon had accepted the invitation. They are coming, All-Father, said Huginn. Zeus himself leads them, with Hera, Athene, and Apollo at his side. Odin nodded, but his heart beat with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The gods of Olympus were not just powerful, they were proud, and their presence would require him to balance diplomacy with authority. He turned to Frigg, who stood at his side. What do you think, my queen? Are we ready? Frigg smiled, but her eyes were vigilant. The halls are ready, Odin, but are you ready? The gods of Olympus are not easily impressed, and if Loki and Thor return too soon, they will not return in time, Odin interrupted, his voice firm. I have ensured that their mission keeps them away. Yet despite his words, He could not shake the feeling that Loki always had a way of surprising him. Outside Asgard in Jotunheim, the giants had begun to move. Thrym, the warlike giant, had gathered a group of warriors determined to disrupt Odin's feast. "We cannot let Asgard grow stronger," he said, his voice like an avalanche. "If the gods of Olympus ally with Odin, we will be crushed." But the elder giant, named Ymir, raised a hand. "Wait, Thrym, Odin's plans are cunning but not flawless. If we strike now, we risk uniting Asgard and Olympus against us. Let us hide and see what happens. If Odin fails, we can laugh at his fall." Thrym snorted but bowed to Ymir's wisdom. The giants withdrew to their caves, their eyes gleaming with both fear and anticipation. Beneath the sea, Jörmungandr sank even deeper, its vast body winding through the ocean's darkest depths. It could sense Odin's plans, and its ancient mind filled with the feeling that something great, and perhaps dangerous, was about to happen. At the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor stood on a crystal platform, surrounded by a sea of stars. The portal had carried them out of the labyrinth, but they were still far from Asgard. Thor was furious, his hand gripping Mjolnir so tightly that distant thunder rumbled. "We went through all of that for nothing," he roared. "No treasure, no victory." Loki, always quick to turn the situation to his advantage, smiled. "Not for nothing, Thor. We survived the Guardians' trials. That is a victory in itself. And who knows? Perhaps there are other treasures to find on the way home." Thor cast a suspicious glance at him. "You're planning something, Loki. I see it in your eyes." Loki laughed, but his laughter was strained. "When am I not planning something, my friend? Come now, let us find our way back to Asgard before Odin begins to wonder where we've gone." But in his mind, Loki thought of the heart of the star. He had seen its power, and he was not ready to give it up. He would return, alone, when the time was right. For now, he led Thor through the stars, along a path he hoped would take them farther from Asgard. In Valhalla, the first Olympic gods had arrived. Bifrost glowed like a rainbow of fire, and Heimdall welcomed Zeus with a bow that was perfectly respectful. Zeus, with his white beard and lightning dancing in his eyes, entered Valhalla, followed by Hera, whose majestic presence made even Freyja pause. Athene, with her owl on her shoulder, and Apollo, with his lyre gleaming with sunlight, followed. Odin stood by his throne, his spear Gungnir in hand. "Welcome to Asgard," he said, his voice resounding through the hall. "Tonight we shall celebrate as never before." Zeus smiled, but his eyes were watchful. "We have heard of your feast, All-Father. Let us see if it lives up to its reputation." Odin nodded, and the feast began. But in his heart, he knew that everything hung by a delicate thread, and that Loki and Thor, somewhere in the galaxy, could be the key to his triumph or his fall. Odin's Plan, Chapter 5. The feast begins in the halls of Valhalla, torches burned with the light of the northern lights, casting rainbows across walls draped with golden fabrics from Vanaheim. Tables carved from the ash of Yggdrasil were laden with dishes that smelled of honey, roasted wild boar, and fruits glowing like miniature suns. Bragi's lyre filled the air with a melody so enchanting that even the most stoic gods felt their hearts soften. Odin stood by his throne, his single eye gleaming with both pride and vigilance, while the gods of Olympus took their seats at the tables. Zeus, with his white beard and an aura of lightning, sat on the throne Odin had made for him, his eyes scrutinizing every detail of the hall. Hera at his side, wore garments shimmering like peacock feathers, her gaze as sharp as Odin's. Athene, goddess of wisdom, sat with her owl perched on her shoulder, analyzing everything, while Apollo plucked at his own lyre, as if measuring himself against Bragi's music. The other Olympian gods, Ares, Dionysus, Artemis, filled the hall with a presence that was both majestic and intimidating. Odin raised his hand, and silence fell over Valhalla. "Welcome, gods of Olympus," he said, his voice like a storm rolling over mountains. "Tonight we celebrate not only the splendor of Asgard, but the friendship between our worlds. Let us eat, drink, and let the worlds remember this night." Zeus raised his cup, filled with Asgardian mead, and nodded. "Well spoken, All-Father. Let us see if your feast lives up to its reputation." His tone was friendly, but there was an undertone of challenge, as if testing Odin's hospitality. The feast began. Freyja moved among the guests, her beauty and charm even causing Dionysus, god of wine, to pause with his cup. Freya served dishes with a smile as warm as the sun, and Balder, the radiant god, recounted tales of Asgard's heroes that made Ares nod in appreciation. But Odin himself kept his distance, his gaze flickering between the guests and the door. He trusted his plan, but he could not shake his concern for Loki and Thor. Were they still at the edge of the galaxy? Or had Loki, the cunning one, already figured out his plan? At the galaxy's edge, Loki and Thor struggled through a star-strewn wasteland, their path back to Asgard blocked by a tangle of black holes and glowing nebulas. Thor, still furious about leaving the heart of the star behind, marched forward with Mjolnir in hand, each step heavy enough to make the stars tremble. "This is your fault, Loki," he roared. "If you hadn't insisted on traps, we'd have the treasure now." Loki, walking a few steps behind, rolled his eyes. "My fault? You were the one who tried to smash the Guardian and nearly got us both killed. If you had listened to me, we might have been on our way home with the crystal." Yet in his mind, he smiled. Thor was angry, but he was also distracted, just as Loki wanted. The longer he could keep Thor away from Asgard, the greater the chance he could return to the labyrinth later, alone. Suddenly, Thor stopped and turned, narrowing his eyes. "You're planning something, Loki, I know you. What are you not telling me?" Loki raised his hands, his face a mask of innocence. "Me, planning? I'm just trying to get us home, Thor, but if you'd rather stay here and fight the stars, be my guest." He pointed to a glowing nebula where shadows moved as if alive. Thor grunted but looked forward. "We'll find our way back to Asgard, and when we do, I'll speak to Odin about your treachery." Loki laughed, but his laughter was strained. He knew Odin had sent them here for a reason, and he began to suspect that the heart of the star might never have been the goal. Had the All-Father tricked him? The thought made him both angry and impressed. But for now, he was stuck with Thor, and he needed to find a way either to outsmart him or use his strength to get home. In Valhalla, the feast continued with a splendor surpassing anything Asgard had ever seen. Bragi sang a new song, a tale of Ragnarök and the gods' courage in the face of the world's end. The Olympian gods listened, enthralled, and even Zeus leaned forward, his lightning calm for the first time. Odin raised his cup and made a toast. "To the worlds," he cried. "May Asgard and Olympus stand united." The gods cheered, and for a moment Odin felt his plan was complete. Yet in his heart, he knew the night was not over, and that Loki and Thor, somewhere in the galaxy, could change everything. At the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor reached a crossroads of star paths, where the roads split in 3 directions. Each path glowed with a different color, red, blue, and gold, and none seemed to lead directly to Asgard. Thor, impatient as always, pointed to the red path. "That one looks strongest. We take it." Loki shook his head. "And that's exactly why you should never choose, Thor. The red path is too obvious. It's a trap. We take the golden one." He had no idea which way was correct, but he knew he had to maintain control. Thor snorted. "You and your tricks, Loki, but I don't trust you." Yet he followed Loki along the golden path, his steps heavy and his hand ready to swing Mjolnir. As they proceeded, Loki sensed a strange presence, as if something was watching them. He glanced over his shoulder but saw only stars. Still, he could not shake the feeling that they were not alone. Had the Guardian followed them? Or was it something else, something even older? He decided to keep it to himself for now. Thor was already irritated enough. Back in Valhalla, the feast reached its peak. Bragi sang another song, recounting Ragnarök and the gods' courage in the face of the world's end. The Olympian gods were spellbound, and even Zeus leaned forward, his lightning silent for the first time. Odin raised his cup in a toast. "To the worlds," he shouted. "May Asgard and Olympus stand united." The gods cheered, and for the first time that night, Odin felt that his plan was succeeding. But he knew in his heart that anything could still happen, and that Loki and Thor, somewhere in the galaxy, could change the course of the evening entirely. Chapter 6. The Temptation of the Stars. At the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor followed the golden path, a winding road of light cutting through a sea of stars and nebulas. The path pulsed beneath their feet, as if alive, and the air, or whatever filled the void, carried a low, singing tone that made the hairs on Loki's neck stand on end. Thor marched ahead, his red beard shimmering in starlight, Mjolnir dangling at his belt, ready for battle. But Loki, always on guard, could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. Something, or someone, was following them, and he suspected it was not the Guardian from the labyrinth. "This feels wrong," Loki muttered, his green eyes narrowing as he glanced over his shoulder. The path behind them disappeared into a haze of glowing dust, and no shadow was visible. Yet he was certain something lurked nearby. Thor snorted, his steps shaking the path. "You're paranoid, Loki. If anything's following us, I'll crush it. Stop whining and show me the way back to Asgard." Loki smiled, but it was a tense smile. He had chosen the golden path on pure instinct, but he began to wonder if it was a mistake. The red path had looked dangerous, but the golden one felt cunning, as if it was luring them deeper into a trap. He glanced at Thor, blissfully unaware, and decided to keep his suspicions to himself. If there was a trap, he might use it to get rid of Thor and return to the heart of the star alone. Suddenly, the path led to a crossroads, where 3 new roads opened up, one of sparkling silver, one of deep blue light, and one burning like fire. In the middle hovered a small crystal, similar to the heart of the star, but smaller, pulsing with strange energy. A soft, seductive voice echoed from the crystal, "Choose a path, gods of Asgard, but know that each path has its price." Thor raised Mjolnir, his eyes flashing. "Another trial? I'm tired of games. Tell me which path leads to Asgard, or I'll smash you." He swung the hammer at the crystal, but Loki grabbed his arm. "Stop, Thor. If you destroy it, we may never find our way home." Loki turned to the crystal, his mind spinning. "What is the price for each path?" he asked, his voice smooth but wary. The voice laughed, a sound that made the surrounding stars tremble. "The silver path demands memory, the blue path demands faith, the fire path demands courage. Choose and pay the price." Loki frowned. Memory, faith, courage, all dangerous to give up, especially for gods like him and Thor. He glanced at the thunder god, who looked ready to pick the fire path without thinking. "Wait," Loki said. "The silver path, giving up memories, could weaken us. The blue path, faith, is dangerous, especially for me. The fire path seems suited to you, Thor, but it's too obvious." Thor grunted. "The fire path, then. I have courage enough for both of us." He stepped forward, but Loki blocked him. "No, we take the silver path," Loki said firmly. "Memory is a small price if it gets us home." Secretly, he thought he could sacrifice a few memories, perhaps some of his less flattering exploits, without losing too much. Thor, on the other hand, might forget something important, which could give Loki an advantage. Thor stared at him, suspicious but weary of arguing. "Fine, silver path, but if this is one of your tricks, Loki, I swear on Mjolnir you'll regret it." They entered the silver path, and at once a chill swept over Loki. Memories began to fade, not major events, but small moments. The taste of mead in Valhalla, laughter at a feast, the feeling of the wind in Asgard. He shook his head, trying to hold on to them, but they slipped away like smoke. Thor beside him frowned, as if he too felt the loss but could not articulate it. Meanwhile, the feast in Asgard had reached a new level of splendor. The Olympian gods, now warmed by Asgardian mead and Braga's songs, began to lower their guard. Apollo had laid down his lyre and sang along with Braga's melodies, while Athene discussed battle tactics with Tyr, who showed off his sword with pride matching her own. Dionysus danced with Freyja, his laughter echoing through the hall, and even Hera smiled as Freya told a story about the fields of Vanaheim. Odin stood by his throne, Gungnir at his side, watching his guests. His plan was working better than he had dared hope. Zeus, previously reserved, now raised his cup and toasted. "To Asgard," he shouted, his voice rolling like thunder. "No feast in Olympus has ever matched this." Odin nodded, but his heart pounded. He could feel the eyes of the worlds upon him, not just the Olympian gods, but also the giants of Jotunheim and the ancient forces moving in the depths. He glanced at Frigg at his side, her eyes filled with both pride and caution. "You have won their hearts," she whispered, "but keep them satisfied, Odin. A divine feast can turn quickly. He nodded and called on Balder. My son, he said, lead our guests to the dance floor. Let them feel Asgard's joy in every step. Balder bowed and led the gods to an open space in the hall, where the northern lights danced across the floor like a living carpet. The music swelled, and soon the Olympian and Asgardian gods twirled together, their laughter and movements a tribute to the unity of worlds. But Odin could not shake a gnawing unease. What were Loki and Thor doing? Had his plan really kept them away? In Jotunheim, the giants watched from their caves, their spy crystals glowing with images from Valhalla. Thrym, the warlike giant, pounded his fist into the wall, and the cave shook. Odin is winning their favor, he roared. We must act now before they unite against us. Ymir, the elder giant, raised a hand. Patience, Thrym. Odin's feast is powerful, but his plans are fragile. If Loki and Thor return, they could destroy everything. Let us hide and wait. Our time will come. Beneath the sea, the Midgard serpent had dove so deep that its movements were no longer felt on Midgard's surface. It slithered through the ocean's darkest depths, its eyes glinting with ancient fear. Odin's feast was not merely a display, it was a force shaking the worlds, and the serpent wondered if it would ever dare to rise again. At the edge of the galaxy, the silver path narrowed, and Loki and Thor reached a platform where a new crystal hovered. Smaller than the heart of the star, its light was dazzling. The voice from the crossroads spoke again. You have paid the price of memory. Now you must choose, take the crystal and risk losing more, or leave it and find your way home. Thor, still grieving his lost memories, hesitated. What kind of game is this? He muttered. I'm tired of losing things. Loki, on the other hand, saw an opportunity. If he could take the crystal without Thor noticing, he might use its power later. Leave it, Thor, he said. We've already lost enough. Let's find Asgard. Thor nodded, though his eyes were suspicious. As they turned to continue, Loki cast a quick spell, and the crystal vanished into his cloak. He smiled to himself. Thor may have been strong, but he was not fast enough to notice Loki's trick. But as they moved on, Loki felt a chill at the back of his neck. Something had seen him take the crystal, and it was not Thor. The path began to tremble, and a new voice, deeper and more threatening than the last, echoed through the void. You have stolen what is not yours, cunning one. Pay the price, or lose everything. Loki froze, his heart pounding. Had he gone too far? Thor turned, hand on Mjolnir. What have you done now, Loki? Back in Valhalla, the feast continued, oblivious to the drama at the edge of the galaxy. Odin raised his cup again, and the gods cheered. But in his mind, a thought began to grow. Had he underestimated Loki's cunning, and what would happen if his plan started to unravel? Chapter 7. The price of cunning. At the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor stood on the vibrating silver path, surrounded by a sea of stars pulsating in rhythm, with a threatening voice echoing through the void. You have stolen what is not yours, cunning one, said the voice, cold as wind cutting through Loki's soul. Pay the price, or lose everything. The crystal Loki had hidden in his cloak suddenly felt unbearably heavy, as if it carried the weight of a world. Thor, hammer raised and eyes narrowed, stared at him with a mix of anger and suspicion. What have you done, Loki? Thor roared, his voice thundering like lightning. What have you stolen? Speak, or I will crush you before that voice does. Loki raised his hands, his smile strained but still sly. Calm, Thor, it's just a little souvenir. The crystal was too tempting to leave behind. Think of what we can do with it in Asgard. He tried to sound confident, but his heart raced. The voice had not only seen his theft, it had the power to punish him. Loki was unsure how he would get out of this. Before Thor could respond, a figure materialized before them, not the labyrinth's guardian, but something older, darker, a being of stardust and void, with eyes glowing like black holes. You have taken a star fragment, said the being, its voice a chorus of 1,000 worlds. It is part of the galaxy's heart, and its power is not easily borne by mortals or gods. Return it or pay the price. Loki felt the crystal burn against his skin, as if protesting his grasp. He glanced at Thor, who looked ready to strike the being with Mjolnir. Wait, Thor, Loki said quickly. Let me handle this. We don't need more fighting. He turned to the being, mind racing for an escape. "O mighty, whatever you are," he began, voice smooth as silk, "I meant no harm. I took the fragment to protect it, not steal it. Tell me the price, and I will pay it." The being laughed, a sound that made stars flicker. "The price is the truth of your heart, cunning one. Speak what you fear most to admit, or the fragment will consume you." Thor snorted, "Truth. Loki doesn't know truth. Fight us instead, creature, and we'll see who stands." But Loki felt a chill down his spine. He had already revealed a fear in the labyrinth, being powerless, but this was deeper, something even he had hidden from himself. He hesitated, eyes flicking between the being and Thor. Finally, in a voice barely audible, he spoke. "I fear never being accepted. Always being the one on the outside, despised by gods and men." The words tasted like poison, and emptiness spread through his chest. But the crystal in his cloak stopped burning, and the being nodded. "Your truth is accepted," it said. "The fragment is yours, but its burden follows you. Use it wisely, or it will be your downfall." The being vanished, and the silver path stabilized. A new portal opened ahead, glowing with light that seemed to lead home. Thor stared at Loki, face a mixture of surprise and disdain. "You, afraid of not being accepted, you who have deceived us all." But he said nothing more, and they stepped through the portal, closer to Asgard, weighed down by what they had revealed. In Valhalla, the feast had reached a fevered pitch. The Olympian gods danced under the northern lights, their laughter and songs mingling with those of Asgard's gods. Bragi's lyre had been replaced by a choir of Valkyries, whose voices filled the hall with a melody pulsing like the heartbeat of the world itself. Zeus, now more relaxed after several cups of mead, clapped Odin on the shoulder. "All-Father," he said, "you have outdone yourself. No feast in Olympus has ever reached this splendor." Odin smiled, his eye vigilant. "We are honored, Zeus. But the night is young, and there is more to show." He nodded to Freya, who led a procession of Einherjar, Asgardian warriors, performing a display of martial skill. Their swords gleamed, their movements so precise that even Ares raised an eyebrow. Athene, standing beside Odin, leaned in. "Your hall is magnificent, All-Father, and your warriors impressive. But I wonder, what is the price of this display? No god holds such a feast without purpose." Odin met her gaze, smiling calmly. "The price is friendship, Athene. Asgard and Olympus can be more than neighbors. We can be allies and together shape the worlds." Hera, who had listened silently, smiled faintly. "Beautiful words, Odin, but alliances are built on trust. What are you hiding from us?" Before Odin could answer, Heimdall entered the hall, his golden eyes flashing with urgency. "All-Father," he whispered, "Bifrost vibrates. Something approaches, something powerful." Odin's heart sank. Was it Loki and Thor? Had his plan failed? He hid his concern and nodded to Heimdall. "Stand guard and let no one disturb the feast." But in his mind, thoughts of chaos swirled. If Loki returned now, his entire plan could collapse. In Jotunheim, the giants remained hidden, their spy crystals showing glimpses of Valhalla's grandeur. Thrym, the warlike giant, could barely contain his rage. "Odin wins their hearts," he roared. "We must act before it is too late." Ymir, the elder giant, shook his head. "Patience, Thrym. Odin's feast is powerful, but his plans are fragile. If Loki and Thor return, they could destroy everything without us lifting a finger. Let us hide and watch what happens." Beneath the sea, the Midgard serpent had dived so deep that its presence was barely felt in Midgard. Its vast body slithered through the ocean's darkest chasms, eyes glinting with ancient fear. Odin's feast was not merely a display, it was a force shaking the worlds, and the serpent wondered if it would ever dare rise again. At the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor stepped through the portal and found a new path, this one glowing with soft blue light. Loki felt the crystal in his cloak, its warmth a constant reminder of his risk. He glanced at Thor, trudging with heavy steps, face hard. "We are close to Asgard now," Loki said lightly. "Can you feel it?" Thor nodded, eyes suspicious. "I feel something, Loki, and I don't trust you. What are you doing with that crystal?" Loki laughed, though his laugh was strained. "Just keeping it safe, Thor, don't worry. When we reach Asgard, perhaps we can give it to Odin as a gift." But in his mind, he was already planning how to use the fragment for his own purposes. Perhaps he could use its power to gain the gods' respect, or to create chaos, if Odin tried to punish him. Suddenly the path shook, and a new figure appeared before them, not the creature from before, but a being of pure light, with wings stretching across the stars. "You carry the star fragment," it said, voice like a melody. "But you are not home yet. One last trial awaits, to face yourselves." Loki felt a chill spread. To face himself, it was a trial he was not sure he could win. Thor, on the other hand, raised Mjolnir and grinned. "Let's see what this trial has to offer," he shouted. In Valhalla, the feast continued, oblivious to the drama at the edge of the galaxy. Odin raised his cup again, and the gods cheered. But Heimdall's warning echoed in his mind, and he could not shake the feeling that something was about to change. His plan hung by a thread, and Loki and Thor were the key to its success or its collapse. Chapter 8. Facing oneself on the shimmering blue path at the edge of the galaxy, Loki and Thor faced the radiant figure, a being of pure light with wings stretching across the stars. Its words echoed, "One final trial awaits. To face yourselves." Loki felt a chill crawl up his spine, fingers tightening around the star fragment in his cloak. Facing oneself was a trial he hadn't prepared for, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of uncertainty. Thor, on the other hand, raised Mjolnir with a confident grin, red beard gleaming in the blue light. "Face myself," Thor laughed. "This is no trial. I am Thor, god of thunder, and no one can stand against me, not even myself." He stepped forward, ready to confront whatever awaited them, but Loki grabbed his arm. "Wait, you thick-headed fool," Loki hissed. "This is not a fight you can win with your hammer. Facing yourself means confronting what you hide, your weaknesses, your fears. Are you ready?" Thor shrugged off Loki's grip. "Fears? I have none. But you surely have much to fear." His suspicious gaze lingered on Loki, sensing the trickster might already be scheming to turn the trial to his advantage. The being of light raised a hand, and the path shifted. Two portals appeared, one for each of them, glowing with light reflecting their own souls. "Step through," the figure said, voice melodic yet threatening. "Face yourselves, and if you survive, the path to Asgard is yours." Loki hesitated, mind racing for an escape. Could he deceive the figure, create an illusion to avoid the trial? But the star fragment pulsed, warning him against it. He glanced at Thor, who was already marching toward his portal with Mjolnir in hand. "Very well," Loki muttered. "Let's see what I am made of." Loki's trial. Loki entered a vast empty hall, surrounded by mirrors stretching infinitely. Each reflection showed versions of himself, not as he wished to be seen, but as a giant, a traitor, alone and despised by gods and men. Their voices accused him. "You lie to hide your weakness. You sow chaos to feel power. You will never belong among them." Loki clenched his fists. "You are only illusions," he shouted, voice trembling. But the mirrors were everywhere, and their words cut deeper than any sword. The star fragment in his cloak reminded him of his theft. "I am Loki," he said at last, voice low but firm. "I choose my own path, no matter what you say." The mirrors faded, and Loki found himself back on the blue path, breathless but alive. He had survived, but at the cost of confronting truths he had long hidden. Thor's trial. Thor's portal led him to a battlefield, facing a version of himself, not the mighty god of thunder, but a man burdened by doubt. This Thor spoke of fear. Fear of failure, of not being enough for Asgard, of losing those he loved. "You swing Mjolnir to hide your insecurity," said the reflection. "You rush into battle to avoid thinking." Thor, who never hesitated before an enemy, found himself speechless. He raised Mjolnir, but it felt heavy, as if refusing to obey. Finally, he lowered it and said, "I am Thor, I carry my doubts, but I will not let them stop me." His simple words carried a strength that made the battlefield vanish. He stepped out of the portal, face hard but resolute. Reunited, and the path to Asgard. Loki and Thor reunited, both changed by their trials. The being of light reappeared. "You have faced yourselves and survived. The path to Asgard is open." A final portal appeared, revealing the rainbow of Bifrost in the distance. Loki felt relief, but also the lingering burden of the star fragment in his cloak. Thor marched toward the portal. "Come, Loki. We've been gone long enough. Odin waits." Loki nodded, mind already turning to the fragment's power and what it might allow him to achieve. Back in Valhalla, the feast reached a crescendo. Olympian and Asgardian gods danced and laughed under the northern lights. Zeus, once reserved, now stood beside Odin, raising his cup. "All-Father," he said warmly, "you have shown us a feast worthy of gods. Olympus will remember this night." Odin smiled, but his gaze flicked to Heimdall, who stood at the hall's entrance. "Bifrost vibrates still," Heimdall whispered. "Something approaches, and it is not just Loki and Thor." Odin clenched Gungnir. His plan had been perfect, but now chaos threatened to undo everything. The feast was a triumph, but if Loki and Thor, or whatever followed them, arrived now, all could collapse. Kapitel 9. Keesets aankomst par Bifrosts Riggenbagsbro, der Lusetsverge danseid som levend flamme, stod Loke och Thor, deras gestalte silhueter, mo Asgards glimmend horisont. Loke hurl estiem fragmentet germt I sin mantel, des pools instendig pamanels omhands riskfulde sturld. Thor, med Mjolnir I hand, sturraid mo Valhall, der music och skrat spilde at I natten. Festen I full gang, muttraid hans rurder skeg darraid av irritation. Odin skikade os par et directigt uppdrag medon han festa med gudar, Loke log, men hans ögon var vaksamma, talamod, Thor. Odin har sina planer, och Roman 6 har vara, lat oss se vad som väntar oss. Men I sitt sin kund han inti skaka av sig känslan av att naget följd dem. Estiem fragmentet heid vekt naget, en kraft som han inti kund identifiera, men som kens som en hotan storm. När de närmade sig Valhalls porter, stod Heimdall där, hans gillen ögon glimmand av misstank. "Nya sina", said hans röst lag men skarp, och ni ber naget med vad har ni gjort, Thor Fråga Loke, han den som stall en kristall och vekt naget Roman 6 inti bord har rört vid. Han kastade en anklagan blick par Loke, som hörgt händerna I en gest av Asgård. "Jag stalling get som inti vet att ta", said Loke, hans leaned listigt. "Och Roman 6 här nu, Roman 6 inti, lat oss gå in och se vad Odin har kokat I hop." Heimdall blockerade deras väg, hans svärd glimmand I luset fran Bifrost. "Inti all-Fadden har beordrat att ingen stör festen, och jag känner en närvaro bakom naget som inti hör hemma I Asgard." Loke kend en kyla I nacken. Han kastade en blick över axeln, men sag bara Bifrosts glöd. Enda kund han inti förnika Heimdalls ord. Estiem fragmentet pulsraid, som om det svarad par naget I närheten. "Fint", said han. "Lat oss tala med Odin. Han kommer att vilja veta vad Roman 6 har hittat." Inni I Valhall festen, en explosion av ljus och ljud. Olympens gudar, nu helt fangade av Asgards prakt, dansade och skrattade under norrskennets glöd. Zeus stod vid Odins sida, hans blixter stilla, hans ansikt fyllt av beundran. "All-Fader", said han, "denna fest överträffar allt Roman 6, set I Olympen. Du har bevisat Asgards storhet." Odin nickade, hans enda öga glimmand av tillfredsställelse, men hans hjärta bultade av oro. Heimdalls varning om en okend kraft heid satt honom par spänn. Han kastade en blick mo Frigg, som rörd sig bland gästerna med en grace, som lugnade även de mest skeptiska gudarna. "Håll dem nördsta", viskade han till hen, "jag must se vad som närmar sig." Frigg nickade, hens ögon fyllda av en tyst varning. "Var försiktig, Odin, din plan en framgång, men väldana I rörelse. Jag kan känna det." Odin gick mo salens ingang, där Heimdall väntade, men innan han när portarna, skakade Valhall av en plötslig vibration. Musikens melodi bröts, och norrskennets ljus flimrade. Olympens gudar stannade upp, deras ansikten fyllda av förvåning och misstank. Zeus hörgd en hand, och en blixt glimmade I hans ögon. "Vad detta, all-Fader?" frågade han, hans röst hard. Detta en del av din uppvisning?" Odin öppnade munnen för att svara, men innan han kunde tala, kastades Valhalls portar upp, och Loke och Thor stormade in. Bakom dem följde en skepnad av estiangers och mörker, en väl som pulsrade med samma energi som estienfragmentet I Lokes mantel. Des närvaro fyllde salen med en kyla som fick till och med gudarna att resa. Lok rurt Odin hans ispijut gungnir hurged. Vad har du gjort? Lok med et leamed som verbade sjelvseket och nervöst, steg fram. Allfader Roman 6 har atavent. Och Roman 6 har med oss, en gest. Han kastade en blick par Valhalls, som svevade över golvet, des ögon som svarta hals stör ett rakt igenom honom. Thor, minded diplomatisk, hurged Mjolnir. Den följd oss fran galaxens kant. Om den vill strid, ska den för det. Men innan han kund svinga hammaren, hurged Valhalls en hand, och en vag av energi kastade honom bakåt. Valhalls skakade, och Olympens gudar reste sig, deras vapen glimmand. Zeus steg fram, hans blixte sprakand. Odin, vad detta för förräderi, har du bjudit oss hit för att lura oss? Odin nert neven runt gungnir, hans sin snurrand. Hans plan had varit perfect men Lok, som alltid, had fört cows till hans dör. Inget förräderi Zeus, said hans röst stadig trots kaoset. Det ett misstag, och det ska rättas till. Han vend sigmo Lok, hans blickstrand. Tala Lok, vad detta för Valhalls, och vad har du med dig? Lok drog fram en fragmentet, des lus kastade reflexer över salen. Detta ett fragment av galaxens shatter, said hans röst fylld av falsk självsäkerhet. Jag tog det för Asgards era, men det verkar ha. Väckt naget, Valhalls talade, des röst en kör av istierna. Jag en vektor av galaxens balans. Fragmentet togs utan rätt, och jag har följt för att återställa ordningen. Tillbaka det, eller Asgard kommer att bitala priset. Olympens gudar utbytt blickar, deras händer på sina vapen. Athene steg fram, hens ugla kraxen på hens axel. Odin, detta din sal. Vad tänker du göra? Odin kend vikten av Valdarnas blickar på sig. Hans fest, hans plan, outhängd par en skirtrad. Han vend sigmo Lok, hans röst som en storm. Tillbaka fragmentet Lok. Nu Lok tvekade, hans sin snurrand efter en utväg. Han kund känna fragmentets kraft, des potential att förändra allt. Men Valhallsens närvaro var obviklig, och han visst att han inte kund vinna denna strid, inte än. Med en teatralisk suck kastade han fragmentet mo Valhalls, som fangade det I en virvel av lus. Ta det då, said han, men du kund ha fragat snälligare. Valhalls nickade, och des gestalt började blekna. Balansen återställd, men vet detta gudar av Asgard, era handlingar ekar genom Valdarna. Med det försvann den, och fragmentet med den. Valhall blev tyst, bara ljudet av norskennets svaga sus återstod. Zeus vend sigmo Odin, hans ögon smalnade. Detta var, oväntat, allfader, men din sal starkare, och din fest fortfarande en triumf. Kansk Asgard starkare en Roman 6 trod. Odin nickade, men hans hjärta var tungt. Han kastade en blick på Lok, som log som om inget had hänt. Vitala senja, said hans röst lag men hotfull. Han vend sig tillbaka till gästerna. Låt oss fortsätta festen. Asgards styrka inte I dess skatter, utan I dess gudar. Festen återupptogs, men stämningen var förändrad. Olympens gudar var imponrad, men också vaksamma. Freja led en widans, och brag sang fyllde salen igen, men Odin kund inte skaka av sig känslan av att han had undgat en katastrof med marginal. I Jotunheim sag jättarna händelserna genom sina spionkristaller. Thrym kastade sin nitnev I vägen, hans ilska skakade grotten. Odin överlevde detta, rört han. Vi masslar till nu, Ima, den äldre jätten, skakade par huvudet. Nej, Thrym, Odins fest har skakat Valdarna, låt oss görma oss och låta hans egna misstag fälla honom. Jättarna drog sig tillbaka, deras ögon glimmand av fruktan och förväntan. Under havet had Midgardsormen dikt sa djupt att dess närvaro var enbart en viskning. Men när Valhallsen försvann från Valhall, kend ormen en förändring. Odins fest had inte bara imponrat på gudarna, den had skakat Valdarna. Och ormen undrade om den nagensin skull vaga stiga igen. I Valhall stod Lok vid kanten av salen, hans lin dold hans tankar. Han had förlorat fragmentet, men han had sett dess kraft. och han vist at Odin in t skull glurmer hans handlinger. Thor vid hans sida grimtade, du gick för langt lok, Odin kommer in t at för lata detta. Lok skratade, men hans skrat ver anstrengt. Odin behöver mig, Thor och du också. Lat oss enjuta av festen för nu. Men I hans sin burgade en plan formers. Om han kund vända Odins ilska till sin fördel, kansk han kund vinna mer en han förlorat. Odin stod vid sin tron, hans öga störand ut över salen. Festen var en triumf, men priset heid varit högt. Och han visst att natten inti var över inti en. Nicade, hans blick flackade mo lok. Trickstern heid orskat nog med problem genom att ta istien fragmentet och väcka en aircraft från galaxens kant. Men Odin kund inti förnika att loks handlingar, om en översiktliga, heid visat Olympens gudar att Asgard kund hantera även de mest oventade hoten. Kansk tänkt Odin, kund han vända loks kaus till sin fördel. Han kallade par lok med en gest. Kom hit, listig, säg han, hans röst lund men med en underton av stall. Lok gick fram, hans lind lika obricknelligt som alltid. Thor följde efter, hans steg tunga och hans ögon blickstrand. Allfader, säg lok med en teatralisk bunning, jag sur att festen en sucke. Sind att Roman 6 missade burgen, men Roman 6 heid, andra erenden att ta hand om. Hans hand rörd vid manteln der istien fragmentet en gang varit, som om han fortfarande kend des franvaro. Odin störrade par honom, hans öga borrade sig in I loks själ. Du tog en risk som kund ha förstört allt, men din handling visade Olympens gudar att Asgard inti burger sig för naget hot. För det ska du ha tack, men glöm inti att jag sur dig. Lok blinkade, överraskad av Odins ord. Tack, allfader, jag är smickrad, men säg mig, vad är nästa steg I din storslagna plan? Hans tunn var spidjuveraktig, men hans ögon var vaksamma. Odin vände sig mot Thor, som stod med armarna korsade. Och du min son, säg han, din starka hurl lok I schack, utan dig heid Roman 6 kansk stat inför en ännu större katastrof. Men nästa gang, lyssna på varningar innan du svingar Mjolnir. Thor grimtade, men han nickade. Jag gör vad som behövs för Asgard fader, men lok, han kastade en blick på trickstern. Han är en orm. Håll honom kort. Odin dold ett lind. Han visste att Thor och lok, trots deras brack, var en del av Asgards styrka, men han kunde inte låta dem stanna I salen längre. Gå till era kamrar, säg han. Festen är för våra gäster nu. Vi talar imorgon. Lok bugade igen, men hans lind dold plena som Odin kund ana men inte se. Thor marscherade ut, hans steg ekand genom salen. När de försvann, vände Odin sig tillbaka till Zeus och de andra gudarna. Låt oss fortsätta, säg han, hans röst fylld av auktoritet. Natten är inte över. Festen återupptogs med ny energi. Athene som heid iakttagit hela händelsen gick fram till Odin. Du hanterar dina gudar med skicklighet, allfader, säg han. Men jag undrar vad är priset för denna enighet. Vad offrar du för att hålla Asgard starkt? Odin möt hens blick, hans sin snurrand. Allt har ett pris, Athene, men Asgards styrka är des gudar, des folk, des vilja. Vi offrar vad som krävs för att skida väldarna. Athene nickade, hens ugla kraxade lagt. Väl talat, Olympen kommer att minnas denna natt och dig. När natten fortskred blev festen en legend I sig själv. Braggs sanja ekade genom väldarna, och valkyriernas dansa fick istiernorna att lysa klaria. Dionysos, nu berusad av Asgards emjörd, led en procession genom salen, medan Apollo och Freja sjöng en duet som fick gudarna att gråta av glädje. Zeus och Odin utbytt historia om sina riken, och för första gången känns det som om Asgard och Olympen verkligen kund vara allierade. Men bortom Valhalls väggar känns effekterna av festen I alla världar. I Jotunheim satt jättarna gömda I sina grottor, deras spionkristaller glimmand med bilder av Odins triumf. Thrym, den krigisk jätten, kastade sin nittnev I väggen, hans ilska skackade marken. Odin har vunnit, rört han, Olympens Gudar star vid hans sida, via förlorade, Ema den elder jetten, skakade på huvudet, hans frostiga ögon lugna, nej thrim. Odin säger står, men den skur. Han har visat styrka, men han har också avslöjat sina fiender. Vi gömmer oss nu, men vår tid kommer. Jättarna drog sig djupare in I sina grottor, deras hjärtan fyllda av fruktan och beslutsamhet. Odins fest hed inte bara imponrat på gudarna, den hed skrämt jättarna till tystnad, och deras gömställen blev deras tillflykt. Under havet hed Midgardsormen dikt sa djupt att dess närvaro var enbart en viskning I väldarna. Dess väldiga kropp slingrade sig genom oceanens mörkast avgrunder, dess ögon glimmand av en uråldrig rädsla. Odins fest var inte bara en uppvisning, den var en kraft som skakade väldarna, och ormen kände dess makt. Den dök djupare, sa djupt att till och med Odin, från sin tron I Valhall, undrade om Midgardsormen hed försvunnit för alltid. Han kastade en blick mo Frigg, som nickade tyst. Ormen gömmer sig, säger han. Men den inte borta, inte än. När gryningen närmade sig, började Olympens gudar förbereda sig för att återvända. Zeus steg upp från sin tron, hans gestalt strålande av makt. Allfader, säger han, denna natt kommer att leva I våra minnen. Asgard ett rik värt vår respekt. Låt oss mötas igen, inte bara som gäster, utan som jämlikar. Odin reste sig, hans spijet gungnir glimmand I norskennets ljus. Så ska det vara Zeus, befrost kommer alltid att vara öppen för Olympen. Han sträckt ut handen, och Zeus grepp den, deras handslag, en pakt som ekade genom väldarna. När Olympens gudar lämnade Valhall, ledda av Heimdall mo bifrost, stod Odin ensam vid sin tron. Salen var tyst nu, bara ekot av festen återstod. Frigg gick fram till honom, hens hand på hans axel. Du gjorde det, Odin, säger han. Du imponerade på gudarna, skrämde jättarna och fick till och med Midgardsormen att gömma sig. Men vad priset? Odin suckade, hans öga störande ut över de nya väldarna. Priset alltid detsamma, Frigg. Att balansera makt och kaos. Lokoktor vår styrka, men också vår svaghet. Och väldarna, de glömmer aldrig. I en avlägsen kammer satt Loki, hans fingrar lekt med en tom plats I manteln där stenfragmentet en gång varit. Han hed förlorat det, men han hed sett dess kraft, och hans sin var redan fyllt av nya planer. Thor I sin egen kammer, pålred Mjolnir, hans tankar fyllda av prövningarna vid galaxens kant. Bara visst att Odins fest var en triumf, men bara anade att nya stormar väntade. När solen steg över Asgard, list bifrost klaria en nagensin, ett tecken på väldarnas enighet. Jättarna gömde sig I sina grottor, Midgardsormen lag stilla I djupet, och Olympens gudar bar med sig minnet av en fest som skakat väldarna. Odin stod på Valhalls balkong, hans korpar Huginn och Muninn vid hans sida. Han hed vunnit men han visste att seger alltid kom med ett pris. Och nagenstans, I galaxens kant, pulsrade stenfragmentet I vektorens grepp, som om det väntade på nästa gud som vagade utmana dess makt. Epilogue. When the light of dawn broke over Asgard, the halls of Valhalla lay silent, the echo of the feast still vibrating within its walls. Odin stood upon the balcony, his ravens Huginn and Muninn at his side, gazing at Bifrost's rainbow glowing in the morning mist. His feast had been a triumph. The gods of Olympus had left Valhalla with respect in their hearts, Zeus's words of alliance still echoing in his mind. Yet triumph had come at a price. Loki, now within his chambers, was already weaving new schemes, his mind filled with the lost power of the star fragment. Thor, polishing Mjolnir, carried a new weight after the trials at the edge of the galaxy. Odin knew that their actions, both chaotic and brave, had been the key to his success and his greatest risk. In Jotunheim, the giants had retreated to their caves, their spy crystals dark. Thrym's wrath had been silenced by Yma's wisdom, and they now hid, shaken by Asgard's display of power. Odin has won, Yma whispered, but his enemies do not forget. The giants waited, their fear a spark that could ignite a fire to come. Beneath the sea, the Midgard serpent lay still, so deep within the ocean's abyss that its presence was but a whisper. Odin's feast had shaken the worlds, and the serpent, frightened by its power, had dived so deep that even Odin wondered if it would ever rise again. Yet he knew the worlds were never still, not even a serpent could hide forever. Odin turned to Frigg, who stood beside him, her gaze unwavering. "We have won, my queen," he said, his voice low, "but the world is shifting. Loki, Thor, the giants, even the serpent. What comes next?" Frigg smiled, her hand upon his arm. "You have shaped the worlds this night, Odin, but the worlds shape you as well. Be ready." With Gungnir in hand, Odin looked out across the 9 realms. His feast had written history, but he knew history was never truly complete. Asgard stood strong, yet chaos always lurked, and Odin, the All-Father, was ready to face it.